Well, after 6 weeks of pulsating racing action, 144 is down to one. Newinn Taylors was crowned the BoyleSports Irish Greyhound Derby champion on Saturday night at a rather surreal Shelbourne Park. Thankfully, we all got to view the action on Racing Post television, and we're joined today by one of the men that made that happen. Jonathan Kay of the Racing Post, a great friend, an honorary Irishman on very many occasions, and an expert in what they call the K9 superstars. JK, you're very welcome to the Talking Derby pod, our last Talking Derby pod, and we thought we'd get the angle from across the water. Of course, we're also joined by Tommy Lyons, the exiled Dub, joining us from his Youghal base. He is looking to get back to Dublin someday, but at the moment it's not quite happening. JK, firstly, you're welcome. A good derby. How was it from your perspective across the water?
I think it was possibly the most embraced Irish derby that I can remember, Ian. Obviously, it's very strange circumstances at the moment. We're in a very compressed racing calendar this side of the water as well. But the fact that RPG TV was able to cover 4 full rounds of the competition meant that so many people engaged with it. And, and let's be fair, it was a brilliant competition, albeit with a somewhat mixed ending because of poor Pastana.
Yeah, of course. Tommy, a strange conclusion to what was a tremendous derby. We must remember, though, there was a brilliant derby winner, as well as what happened to Pastana, but it was about the derby winner on Saturday night in the end.
Yeah, I think, the final is only one race, and there's so much that came before it. We talked about this, Ian, last week, and we kind of mentioned the fact that sometimes finals are won in 30, 40 spots slower than the rest of the clocks through the derby. I mean, it's 6 rounds. It's a lot to ask of any greyhound. Brilliant if you have one of those last surviving 6 greyhounds in the derby, and anything can happen, and it almost did on Saturday night. I'd be one of these kind of purists. I'm happy that a Newinn Taylors won it because he was one of the 2 exceptional greyhounds in the derby. Of course, I'd be delighted for the course if Mina Miracle had switched inside at the last bend and got up, and it would be a fantastic story. But it was such a high class derby all the way through. It would have been a little bit of a dampener if it had been won with all what happened to Pastana, and Newinn Taylors missed it. The dogs charged the traps again as they did in the early rounds. Thankfully, we can always come. We can, in 3, 4, 5 months' time, people will think back and say Newinn Taylors won the derby. They won't be talking about the derby final itself, I hope.
Yeah, we will talk about Pastana now, and I don't mean to say we'll get it out of the way, but we might as well address it. And it was a shock to all. It was one of the lowest points I've ever come across it in greyhound racing. It took me 20-25 minutes to get over it, and to be brutally honest, I was really struggling on the night. It reminds me, going back 2 occasions in greyhound racing, it reminds me of. I remember as a child, sort of 12, 13 years of age, getting the phone call on the coming home from Shelbourne Park. Actually, my father had left a message on the answer machine that Ardford Mick had broken his leg in the final of the Scottish Derby. And then the one that really, really stands out, of course, was watching Premier Fantasy in the semi-finals of the English Derby. We're almost 20 years ago now at this stage, but I never forget the silence that descended on Shelbourne Park that night from across the pond. JK, I know you were in Wimbledon that night. How would it equate to you?
You've hit it on the head, Ian. I mean, I was there for Premier Fantasy, and it's the most shocking thing I've ever seen. Obviously, I was in the production gallery on Saturday, so I was in the position, unlike yourself. I think I texted you. We knew something bad had happened, but obviously we were, with the camera angles, we were unable to know. And I think what came across was everyone involved, all the interviews. Look, it's important to have a champion, and we've got a great champion, without a shadow of a doubt. But greyhound folk know that the most important thing is the dogs themselves. And you could just tell Robert Gleeson, Graham Holland, everybody who was interviewed, their first thoughts were for Pastana.
Yeah, Robert Gleeson, in fact, was I think it was his van that actually transported the dog, because he is more open van, whereas Owen's is more segmented. So in order for people to sit with the dog, they actually transported in Robert Gleeson's van. Just goes to show that everyone sort of rose in behind. I know every dog matters, be it A9, A10, all the way down to really top class performers, and then superstars like Pastana. But for it to happen to that dog in particular in the Derby final, after playing such a big part in the Derby, you referenced there, JK, that you started, coverage of the Derby in the 3rd round, but it was his 2nd round performance the night where he broke the 29 seconds. It really captured the imagination of the greyhound world, and not just Ireland and England, but I mean the greyhound world. And it probably helped bring your viewership up in the third round. People wanted to see this superstar live and in action.
As Tommy says, what you need, you want the superstars to come through, and they delivered. They delivered round after round. Pastana's breaks, his trapping was something surreal. You've not seen the like of it. And then you could see Newinn Taylor throughout the competition becoming a man. And that's probably what won him the final, because I suspect the Newinn Taylor of 6 weeks ago probably wouldn't have got round the first bend in the way that the Newinn Taylor of now does.
Yeah, Newinn Taylor, Tommy, on the night, it was a good run. Like it was brave and determined rather than the brilliance we'd seen. Graham Holland intimated in an interview that, you know, he'd done a massive run the semi-final, and you feared that they'd leave their derby in the semi-finals. As it was probably the last week of his peak performance, because, you know, I don't see where he lost the time on Saturday night to do 29.61. He was probably just coming to the end of his tether a bit. He'd had a long campaign, long season. He will be given a break now, but, you know, given his trajectory this year and through the Derby, you know, where does this trajectory stop in the future? Like this dog could be anything.
Yeah, he certainly could. Look, he lost it where the rest of them lost it. It was at traps. I mean, the charging of the traps. We know the dogs had a chance to reset, but it's kind of impossible for us to gauge what effect that might have on a greyhound who's waiting for those lids to open, to ping. You know, greyhounds that break as well as Pastana does, as well as Newinn Taylor does. He lost it there, even though they had reset themselves, and maybe he didn't charge the traps. I can't say for certain, because, you know, it's difficult in the pictures and the bars to see. We can certainly see Pastana did it fairly badly. But Newinn Taylor did a 341, which was back 9 spots. He's losing 9 spots already. But if you watch the race again, and I've watched it over and over, that first bend, I mean, there's a whisker between him and Ballymac Cooper coming together at the first bend. How he got around it, I mean, talk about a brave greyhound. And he had to, you know, even if we say that Mina Miracle kind of maybe lost her chance when she switched outside of the last bend, he still had to dig deep. He knew she was there. She touched him, she rubbed across him, or she checked outside him. I mean, he's a tough greyhound. I think a couple of things came to the fore on the final night, which I thought were fantastic for any derby, or for any bit of greyhound racing. A great greyhound went and won the derby, and that's what we wanted. He is a superstar. He lost his unbeaten tag in the early rounds of the derby. Maybe that was somewhat by Graham Holland, you know, kind of treating him perfectly through the derby, just building up, getting to the final. And then, you know, what we see anything can happen in the final. But the real thing that came to the fore, I felt, was that when Graham was being interviewed after the Newinn Taylor won, he wasn't focused on Newinn Taylor. He was thinking about Pastana. He was thinking about Owen McKenna, Sharian O'Donnell, who bred Simon Taylor, who are not Simon Taylor, sorry.
That's great.
My apologies. The Pastana, he was thinking about, you know, not about his own connections, but about the connections of Pastana. And that's what greyhound racing is about. If anybody doubts that these people don't love their greyhounds and other people's greyhounds, I mean, Saturday night proved that. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic to see. Graham Holland's won the Derby 3 times, and maybe you can say, oh, maybe he's used to it or whatever. But it's still the mark of the man to be reflecting on Pastana rather than on Newinn Taylor when he's just won. Sorry, JK, but he's just won the best greyhound race in the world.
JK will freely admit that, I'm sure. JK, I've written it a couple of times. I think I said it the other night. Graham Holland really is the master trainer. You know, what he is achieving the last few years it's otherworldly. It's pretty stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I've particularly been following the Irish scene more in the last few months, and you know the number of times Graham Holland. He's got some kennel of dogs, and he has some number of runners as well, here, there, and everywhere. So, you know, it's obviously a huge operation. He's done exceptionally well. I think one thing about Newinn Taylor that I picked up yesterday in an interview that I think he did with the Greyhound Star, that he said his tonsils were a bit inflamed after the semi-finals, and they didn't really know what they were going to get in the final. So maybe that's something to factor in as well. And look, even with the week between rounds, which we have finally in England followed with and do our derby the same, it's still a grueling competition. And as Tommy said, you tend not to see the final one in the most rapid time of the competition. I completely agree with you that the Irish Derby, the BoyleSports Irish Derby was set up with that second round performance. But it wasn't just a derby of two greyhounds. I mean, there was a big quartet really going through it for a long way, and it was in the end survival of the strongest.
Yeah, we speak there of the other four greyhounds at this point. Tommy, up to the final, myself included, the previews would suggest that one of the big two were going to get loose. They were going to buckle into the corner. Something was going to lead around the bend and go on to win the Derby. Liam Dowling had other plans. His two dogs were there, and they really did try and crash the party. Ballymacwild was up the inside. Okay, he was just losing a little bit of ground as they reached the corner, but he wasn't very far away from going around. Very close indeed. And so too, Ballymac Cooper. He was nearly just clear of Pastana, but again, turned sideways. As you say, just missed Newinn Taylor. Lost that bit of ground on the opening corner. Liam Dowling, another man with exceptional kudos over the last few years. He really is another master trainer, but apart from that, a master breeder.
Yeah, to be honest, Ian, like Ballymacwild and Ballymac Cooper, even though they were nicely enough beaten in the end, they both ran exceptionally good races. Ballymac Cooper got a bump early and could easily have been taken out of the first bend. Thankfully, he wasn't. Ballymacwild was right there, as you say, and he's a strong dog. He was right there, but Pastana was trying to run that inside rail tight. And that's where they bumped. Pastana went out the other way, unfortunately, and whatever happened after that. It was unfortunate. It didn't compromise Ballymacwild's chance. It finished it. But it could easily have done the same to Ballymac Cooper, and he ran a superb race for a dog that missed a bit of time to finish third, beating a couple of lengths, 2.5 lengths in the Derby final. Liam can be very proud, not only on the breeding side, but the fact that he got the two of them to the final, and they did. He had them primed. He had them absolutely spot on. Things didn't work out. That's a final that's any greyhound race for you. It's not just the final of a derby or the final of a competition. That's any greyhound race for you. Things didn't work out, but Liam Dowling couldn't have done anything better. I tell you what, the reality is, if you were backing the dog of Liam's next year in the derby, you can be confident that come derby final night, if that dog qualifies for it, that is one dog you no concerns about it being slightly below par or whatever. Liam has done that expertly. They finished third and fifth. It doesn't read fantastically in when you compact the whole derby down to one race, but over a full derby, it's fantastic. He is a master trainer. I mean, what he's doing for breeding in Ireland and England, of course, a lot of the greyhounds travel is amazing. He deserves plenty of credit. He'll win more derbies. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah, JK, of course, you're more familiar with Liam Dowling these days than you would have been, 10 years ago, let's say. But, given the stock that he's sending over and selling, perhaps keeping a lot of the best stuff for himself when he comes over, like we saw with Ballymac Taz last year. This was a bitch that had been knocked out in the Oaks a week prior to the English Derby starting. Got to the final in another few strides. She's not going to be far away from winning an English Derby. He really packs a punch and has a massive reputation across the pond.
Oh, fantastic reputation. And you're right. I mean, Ballymac Taz's Derby campaign last year was something of an afterthought, really. And she went so close, didn't she? And, when you speak to Liam, which obviously I do when he has his big successes, you get straight talking from him. I always get the impression with him that he plots a good campaign. He gets his dogs to come through at the right time, and I agree with Tommy. I mean, the two greyhounds in the final. Yes, it didn't go for them, but I think Ballymacwild in particular, it was halfway to the run to the first bend. You realise that Pastana, despite coming out pretty well, maybe not explosively, but pretty well, was struggling to get past him, and it obviously had a huge bearing on the outcome of the race.
Yeah, he certainly does plot a campaign for them, but it's a busy campaign. He's not afraid to run his dogs. He's old school in that way. Like, his dogs are hardened. There's nothing soft about them, Tommy.
No, but it's a point I was making a couple of minutes ago, Ian, that they can go through, and he's done it with dogs that have got to a final, maybe not won it before, but he has won, of course, with Ballymac Matt. But they've been there fresh and they produced in the final. Producing in the final doesn't mean you win. It means you're absolutely 100%. You're on your game. Things might have to fall into place. His two dogs in the final on Saturday night just didn't have the early pace. Just didn't have that little bit of extra what you needed on this occasion. Maybe their stamina would have been good enough with a clear run, but if you don't have the early pace to get around in front in a greyhound race, you are requiring a little bit of luck. Liam might keep the dogs busy, but it's the right thing to do, isn't it? There's good pots to be won. There's a lot of good stakes around the country. You go find them And then it's a measure of the man that he can bring them to the Derby then, and have them run the way they did. I mean, Ballymacwild was one of the stars, as JK said, one of the stars throughout the competition. 29:07, I think, in one of the rounds. I mean, that's subbed the previous record. I mean, that's phenomenal stuff. To come to the Derby final and effectively run his race, it just didn't happen for him. I mean, that's, as I say, I don't know, can't go back and Liam Dowling dogs in any competition.
We must mention the other two runners, of course, Mina Miracle and Clara Icon. Mina Miracle, an incredible run from her in defeat. We can talk about the last corner all we like, but it is her tendency. She just like to swing wide. I just wonder if she had been a further length behind, would she have switched inside rather than outside? The next question would be, if Clara Icon and Mina Miracle had been reversed, or if they had been in different positions going into the bend, with Clara Icon in last and Mina Miracle in fifth, Clara Icon decided to go between. Well, he didn't decide; it was just an instinctive thing. He had no real chance to operate otherwise. He went in between the two runners, Ballymacwild and Pastana, while Mina Miracle stuck to the fence, went round third, and then she made her move. If Clara Icon had been in the same position at the second bend, would he have won the Derby, given that he's more likely to challenge on the inside?
Well, I'll go first. Clara Icon is a dog that I did go over the cliff with a little bit in the early rounds of the competition, because he kept showing this huge pace, maybe not running the first bend, as hard as some others, and putting himself in a bad position. He's done a ridiculous amount of running in the final. I mean, in the end, he's got beaten a photo for third. So you do have to wonder how different it might have been. But I think one of the things you're going to take out the final, without a shadow of a doubt, is the what if with Mina Miracle. To me, she looked like the winner at 3/4. But as you say, she has this tendency to swing off. Would she have swung off if she'd been that little bit further behind? I think the door would have been so inviting for her that she probably would have gone through on the inside.
She may still have swung off, but she might have been a lot closer to Taylor. Like she could still be in the middle of the track, shall we say?
What I think we shouldn't forget, though, or we should acknowledge, is that Newinn Taylors still dug very, very deep on that run-in. She's if there'd been betting in running, I would have made her just about favourite, as I say, probably at 3/4. And in the end, he's toughed it out really well. If you take the first bend melee out of it, there's some great stories from that point onwards.
Tommy, we actually said during the week that the two outsiders in the race were priced derisively. Now, to be honest, they should have been a little bit shorter. It was like 40-1 in places was a bit of an insult to their claims.
Those things never concern me whatsoever, because they're only opinions. I mean, Declan O'Donoghue last week, we all said that Newinn Taylor would definitely be favoured. We thought that the professionals of his semi-final run would guarantee that he was favoured. On the night, it favoured Pastana. He went off 11-8. Newinn Taylor 13-8. I don't think connections care an awful lot about the price of it. Mina Miracle, if it had been a further length behind, would it have won the Derby? I doubt it, because
he has to make up that further length, of course.
has to make up that further length. I thought, as JK said, that the winner.
I actually didn't ask you would she have won the Derby if she was a further length behind. I said, would she have gone up the inside if she'd been a further length behind?
And been beaten half length still. I don't know. But the reality is, I think she'd have coursed the exact same line if she was a further length behind, and then she has to decide, does she want to go inside or outside? Yes, she doesn't have to check, and she might have got close. But I think it's a good sign of the bitch that she was coursing it so well that she swung wide into the straight, to be quite honest about it. It's a good sign of a genuine greyhound. Just a little bit unlucky, I'd say. We saw the social media stuff of the core family the previous week. I'd say what happened on Saturday night was probably frightening. Maybe it's not for social media, I don't know.
We saw it.
Did you see it?
It was everybody excited. And there seemed to be celebrations going on. It wasn't a case of, what they were happy. You could see them. They were really delighted to finish second in the Derby, which is great.
You're brought to a phenomenal high. If you think your greyhound, that, like JK said, in running, she's probably favoured. And at third bench, you're thinking, my God, we're going to win the Derby here. You've got that absolute high, a little bit of a low for probably 2 seconds, and then you go, my God, we finished second in the Derby. Fantastic. It's still great. I hold my hands up and say I'm a purist, and I like the best greyhound or a superstar to win all these competitions. It doesn't always work that way. If it did, it would be boring. But there was nearly another great story with Mina Miracle, in fairness.
Yeah, Yeah, JK, you referenced there Newinn Taylor. There's no question. He put his ears back. He stuck his neck out and he dug deep for that winning line. I know it's not going to happen, but let's get a time machine. Go back 10 years. What sort of a draw would the likes of Pastana and Newinn Taylor be at Plough Lane?
Oh, they both would have been made for the place, wouldn't they? You know, absolutely made for it. I mean, and the frightening prospect with Newinn Taylor is at the stage of his career that he's at. You know, if he learns just to trap a little bit better, because he's a little bit one of those dogs. He doesn't miss the break, but he's a bit flat-footed. He's not explosive like Pastana, but the way he then paces into the bend and sweeps around it, and we've seen with our own eyes, he's got stronger. And the good thing is, he's got stronger with each run, but that hasn't lessened him in the early pace department, because that's what you want. At the end of the day, you want the early pace. Yes, you've got to stay the trip, but you know, you'd always take a bit more early and take your chance in front. Well, to me, he's become the all-round package.
He certainly is. He's not going to England, obviously, enough at this stage. We don't know where he'll actually next turn up. He will be given a break. I'm sure they'll let the dog decide themselves. But they are going to England. They're bringing a good team. They're bringing the 2019 champion Lenson Bocco. Newinn Session is another superstar for Simon Taylor. And I dare say by the opening round, Newinn Session will be favourite English Derby. What do you think, JK?
I think Lenson Bocco, Newinn Session are amongst a few trialling on Wednesday. And I think Graham Onsall's got trials booked on Friday. I think Black Parachute might be in the party to travel as well. Look, I begrudge to admit it. You might not be strong in numbers this year because of the circumstances, but you're still going to be very strong at the top of the market. And you know, I don't think at the moment there's a home challenger remotely close to the caliber of the Irish dogs that are coming over. It doesn't mean you're going to win it, because you won't have that many numbers. You need things to fall right for you. But at the moment, I think the Irish form is significantly better than the English form.
Yeah, maybe small numbers in 96 though, rather than small numbers in 150 or 160 as in previous years. Tommy, what's your take on this? A strong challenge going across. Nottingham is our track. Let's get that straight.
I was going to ask JK, was there something else that he spotted maybe among the obviously the winner's not going to go there, but was there something else amongst the throughout the Derby that you spotted that might be a natural greyhound for England?
I'll tell you a dog that I thought might have shown its true worth round Nottingham would have been Glengar Bale. I think he would have been a decent Nottingham dog. As far as I understand, I don't think there were plans for him to travel. Look, I think we're still learning about Nottingham as a Derby venue, to be honest with you. You know, it was a very good competition last year, but it was a competition that I think we all felt for a lot of it that we weren't quite sure what type of dog you needed for it, and in the end, we got a mixture of dogs who made it there. We got a mixture of early pace and strong runners. Maybe that's just a competition how it'll pan out for you. I think having watched the trial stakes so far this year, I'm fairly convinced, with a possible exception of a dog called Southwood Jet, that we haven't probably seen the winner in action over the last few weeks.
Okay, so you were expecting a strong Irish challenge once again. 1, 2, 3 in the final would be lovely for the Irish tricolours waving. That'd be a tremendous sight. Of course, you'll be showing it all on Racing Post TV.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trap draw kicks it all off. I think entries closed 3:00 this Thursday. Then obviously it's got to be a selection panel this year, because we're expecting. I think this week there's about 150 greyhounds, 160 maybe, trialing or racing. So you know that's got to distill down into 96. There'll be a seeding panel as well to review all the seedings, which I think was a great innovation last year. I really did think that helped the competition. And then the trap draw, we're actually showing live on RPG TV. It doesn't always make for great TV in terms of the length of time, but we're starting an hour early on Saturday at 5 p.m. And the top of the show will include the trap draw for the Star Sports and Arc English Derby first round.
Great. Getting back to your own coverage of the Irish Derby, it was very well received. Any plans for the future?
Well, I think we say never. We've absolutely loved having the coverage. Your input has obviously been much appreciated. I thought Rob Catterson did a fantastic job. What was the line? Anyone who stayed still for more than 30 seconds, there was a microphone stuck under.
Robert is not afraid to ask a question. I can safely say that.
Well, it was good, and then we pushed it a little bit more on Saturday. Obviously, we had the ability to link to you, which was great for the guys in the studio. They got a night off. You did all the hard work. That was tremendous, and it's really been fantastic. The feedback that we've had from England and Ireland, particularly Ireland, and in the circumstances, I don't think we could have chosen a more important competition to cover because of the fact it was unavailable for so many people to go to.
J.K., I don't know if you if you have the numbers on hand or anything like that, but do you know how the viewing figures are or how they would compare normally? Or
so we don't actually get viewing figures. Your
gauge would be the interaction.
It's interaction and turnover, and the bookmakers have had great turnover. What we do know is that the streaming, because it's available on a number of platforms, that's gone through the roof over the last few weeks. And what's been good is everyone's known, it's Saturday, it's Shelbourne, Now, one of the issues that we do have is that given the complexity of media contracts, we can only make alterations to our regular schedule so many times a year. And we've used 4 of those for Shelbourne. We've got other things coming up in the pipeline. But I think what you can say without fear of contradiction is that the reception of the Irish coverage, and of course, remember we covered a random meeting, didn't we?
Tralee.
We were in Cork,
yeah,
and Tralee on as well. Did we not earlier in the year as well? So look,
do they count as your contractual ones, or because of circumstances they don't count?
Because of circumstances, they're all right.
They're freebies.
They're freebies, yeah, because that was because we didn't have content available over here for whatever reason at that time. But the great news is that, honestly, the Irish Derby coverage has been so well received, there is certainly going to be an appetite to look at doing more.
Tommy, of course, you were exiled from Dublin this year. Everyone was exiled from Shelbourne Park. How was it for you? Like, Racing Post Television made life a bit easier, I'm sure.
It certainly did. As I said before, I did mention that the quality of the pictures can be a small bit iffy, and particularly when they're back in the studio. I presume that's a financial implication there, that maybe the reason behind that. But anyway, regardless of that, I made the point before that it's just been fantastic. What I loved about the extra bit I loved on Saturday night was going back to you, Ian, for just the one replay, and letting you analyse the race or kind of explain to people what was going on. We see it in horse racing all the time. They go straight back to the studio or to whoever's talking. They show the replay of the race, and somebody goes through and analyses, says what happened. I really enjoyed that bit on Saturday night. I think that's an extra. And just to make the point, I know a lot of things have to fall into place, but I mean, it's not like greyhound racing is prospering at the moment, and unfortunately, but maybe it will flourish again. But like, it's so important that we can work together between Ireland and the UK. And whenever we can, I mean, I've no doubt even listening to the presenters on Racing Post TV and just the passion that they had for the Irish racing as well. I mean, it was huge. It was important to us over here as it was to show it to UK audience. If something can be done to kind of maintain that link and strengthen it, I would say, over the next few years, it's really, really important. We have to come together. I mean, to show. I mentioned earlier on about Graham Holland. His first thoughts were for Pastana. I mean, people love the greyhounds, and we need to show that. We really need to show that the passion's there. And it came out in Racing Post TV, and I'd like to see more of it. I don't personally. This is just I don't have any great affection for for watching whatever Romford or whatever tracks you show, English tracks in general. I just don't have the. Obviously, I want to watch the big races, and I'll be watching Nottingham for the whole of the Derby and whatever. But in general, I don't. I'd like, but if I had an Irish race meeting that was stuck in there along with it, I'd be more inclined to engage with it. And I think that's kind of important to keep the interest from both sides. I'm just saying it honestly, Ian. I mean, I have no idea of graded form, and I have no interest in having a bet in graded form in England if I don't have an idea of what's happening.
Well, you don't have the time. Like, you're covering the horses and the dogs here in Ireland, of course.
Yeah, but even at that, Ian, I mean, look at if it's an open competition or whatever, yeah, you're going to have an interest, and there's a good chance that there's an Irish bred greyhound, or there's some sort of interest. I know the times at the moment are difficult, and they're kind of conspiring against everything. But I mean, I think the Racing Post TV showing the Irish Derby was huge, not just because things have been difficult in the industry for the last few years, but also because of COVID-19 and things were just difficult for travel and people getting involved. And I mean, it was absolutely huge. I don't even think you can overplay it. It's the importance of it. And for me, from my point of view, even for coming on here, to be able to sit down and really kind of engage with it on the Saturday night before you come on here, you know exactly what you want to say. You know, I loved it. I say there is a small issue with the quality, particularly when it goes back to the studio. Just the picture seems to be particularly fuzzy. But I mean, you can't complain about it. I thought actually the pictures in Shelburne Park on Saturday night were actually clearer than they had been previously. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's just me. But overall, brilliant. I'm just delighted. Just brilliant. And I hope to God that we can find a way to link it a bit more in the future.
Indeed. The one word that Tom used there, JK, was engagement. And there did seem to be an awful lot more engagement with this derby. Obviously, that's driven very much by the circumstances, but there have been new things, the likes of ourselves here, the likes of Racing Post Television getting involved. It's the future. It's the way it should be.
Well, don't forget to mention and plug your own Irish Focus segment every Wednesday. And I think that's been
Sunderland and Yarmouth expert Dean Fortune.
Yeah. You have tipped one winner in the 8 weeks, haven't you?
I did a tip. I think tip 2. In fact, the handicap sprints, I'm nailing them.
But it's not always easy to squeeze the stuff in. But we're trying to show as much of the main racing as we can. And now that the Irish Derby's finished, I'm sure that obviously I know you're very much part of showing, just telling us what races to show. But I'm sure we'll be travelling all around the country for the footage in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing that we sort of got across from the start is we will try and cover all the open events across the land. Obviously, when the Derby's on in the early rounds, you're showing so much of that you can't get around to the likes of the early rounds of the Munster Oaks, let's say, or, the early rounds of the Champion and Race down in Kilkenny. But we will get to them. We will show the semi-finals and final when we can, and we'll definitely do some sort of an angle on it. I think that's the key, is to, we like the fact that our dogs are being showcased. We like the fact that you're not coming to a big event in England, you're talking about, this dog, I remember seeing this dog run. Whereas now you can say, I've engaged with this dog. I've seen this dog. That dog ran the Champion Unraced. I saw him in the second round and he ran very well. He got knocked out in the semis, but I know this dog. And when you have a knowledge of a greyhound from your own betting, your own sponsors, your those that back the channel, it works because people are more likely to get involved.
Well, when I was doing the VT inserts for the Shelbourne card on Saturday, it was amazing just how much racing around the country I had the option of using. Sprint Cup races, track records at Waterford. That would never have had that a year ago. So there's definitely a bigger understanding of what's going on in Ireland. Yes, the Derby coverage, we've all loved doing it and it's been really well received, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and you need to know what's going on over in England. We need to know what's going on in Ireland.
Yes. Now, looking ahead, Tommy, it'd be remiss of us not to mention today at 5 p.m. on Facebook. Of course, by the time this is aired, it'll be too late. But the Laurels Draw is to be, streamed live. Another great innovation. It's something that came in the UK a while back. We've been doing it for the Irish Derby a few years, and maybe did the Laurels last year as well, I believe, and probably the Ledger. But yeah, it's great to see, and it should be a cracking Laurels this year.
Yeah, it definitely should. I don't have a list of greyhounds that are entered here in front of me. Obviously it's a crying shame that we don't have the type of early paces that we had in the Derby, but maybe we will. I don't know. I don't want to mention greyhounds in particular, because in case they don't turn up or whatever's going to happen.
Something like Grange U10 will certainly be there, and given his performances in Dundalk, he's a real draw.
Yeah, terrific early pace. Yeah, that's key around Curraghy Park. Obviously, it is a fantastic stake. It's all down to Jimmy Barry Murphy, Tony Winters, and the gang who have worked so tirelessly to get the money to sponsor the stake. That is guaranteed it for 3 years from last year. So I hope it will be supported. I'm sure it will be heavily supported. And if we can, as I say, Racing Post TV have grabbed an audience now, a bigger audience than maybe ever, particularly on this side of the Irish Sea, and hopefully they can keep it. And I'm sure you'll be talking about the Laurels on Racing Post TV over the next number of weeks anyway.
Yeah, given the fact that this is the Talking Derby podcast, we must end with a last few words about the Derby. In a year's time, Where will Newinn Taylor be, lads? What do we expect him to do? What do we expect him to achieve? Where could he go in the world?
I think he'll be in the final of the Irish Derby and probably favourite.
That's fair enough, Tommy.
See, if you asked that question last year, we probably would have said Lenson-Bach would be in the final of the Irish Derby.
He could well now win the English Derby, Tommy. Just remember that.
No, not for me. Not for me. I'd just like to see a bit more from him. Maybe he will. Can't underestimate Graham Holland. Where will Newinn Taylor be? I don't know. Let's not underestimate what he's achieved already. Produce Stakes and a Derby. That takes a huge amount out of a greyhound. Graham has said, in fairness to him, that he's going to give the dog a rest. Let him kind of tell him when he's ready to come back again. He will look after him with the Irish Derby in mind for next year. Could he win 2 in a row? Maybe, but like the history dictates that it won't happen. Let's enjoy the fact that he was a brilliant winner of the Derby. Not a brilliant Derby final, but a brilliant Derby winner.
Great. JK, thanks for being on. Exile Dub, thanks for being on. That's it for Talking Derby for 2020, believe it or not. I'm sure we'll be back in 2021, but I can exclusively tell you we'll be back next Monday for Talking Laurels. JK won't be with us, but we'll definitely have JK on again in the future because he's been a great guest. Thanks so much, JK. But that's it for Talking Derby. Join us next week for Talking Laurels.